obviously together, Ketchup and I played a lot of the beta over the weekend, and once the stress test was finished originally, we did quite an informal sit-down, lengthy discussion about our thoughts on the game, where, what we thought was happening and how it was all doing, and just generally what we think of the game so far. And people seem to enjoy that discussion. The video did quite well on YouTube, so we thought, since we played and streamed so much of the beta as well, that we would do another thing now, or another discussion of that nature. And that's what we're going to do now. So that's going to be for the next hour or so, and then in 2 hours' time, we have the Gamescom opening night reveal show where it is confirmed that we'll be getting the next MK1 trailer with new characters, new cameos, and whatever else is in the trailer. Red Gaming, thank you very much for the Prime. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for using that here. Enjoy your ad-free viewing, Discord access, and all the usual stuff. But yeah, that's basically going to be it for today's stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And first things first, we're going to start with this MK1 chat. Now, as I said before, Ketchup and myself, we're both here to talk about it. We both played a lot of the beta over the weekend, sometimes against each other, mainly just against whoever was in matchmaking. And unlike the last discussion, where it was a lot of like fresh thoughts for the first time, a lot of this discussion is going to be comparisons from last time to now. Now, it's not all going to be like, A to B comparisons, but it is going to be important to do so because this was a very different version of the game. And I think there is a lot to cover. Right, let me just get
There's just a lot of...
There we go.
There's just a lot of differences. Small differences, though. I had a sort of initial test because I was lucky enough to be at EVO, where this build was playable. So we kind of got to see some of those changes firsthand and kind of seeing all of it retained in the beta. I think overall, if we're going to start it with like some opening statements and stuff like that, I feel like...
Opening statements, it's so official. Yeah, chat, you're on trial.
All I'm saying is...
Sorry, not to completely rob you of your flow.
No, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Threw me right off. My first impression is that I think there's just tons of promise. My biggest critique, like by far, and we were both very, very open about that, was... the movement. Didn't really like the movement.
Yeah, stress test movement, right?
It was too restricted in the stress test. I said before, I kind of feel like it went against the design philosophy of freedom and creativity to have restricted movement. The introduction of even just dash blocking, for me, has actually fixed every concern I had. I think this game still has a thing with it where it looks slower than it is to play. I think that's a common thing that I've seen a lot of people say, is that they watch it and they think, oh, this game doesn't look very fast. When you're actually playing it, it's a very different experience. Fighting Johnny Cage in this beta, who's like, wave dashing in and out, in and out, in and out, and he's constantly sticking out these really good fast mids, like that one, just in front of the screen.
Yeah, the footage you're watching right now is from when I was playing the beta yesterday against a really good Johnny Cage player from my chat, and I think it's a good demonstration just even seeing it of what the increased movement was like, because I think you are correct. We were both the same in the stress test. Like, the game feels really fluid, really open, really creative, and the movement just didn't match that at the time. Now, they did change in the beta. This is the first major change we'll be talking about, and I know we've covered it a lot in videos already, and many other people have talked about it, but they changed how dashing and blocking worked, in the sense that beforehand, in the stress test, or the first version of the game that we all played, you could not interrupt forward or back dashes with block. You had to do crouch and then block, or a button, or something like that. In the beta version, they simply changed it that you could do a standing block out of forward or back dashes. And that now enables you to just do this very swift and clean, almost like gliding across the screen kind of movement, where it was one thing hearing about the change, because obviously people tried it at EVO, because the EVO build is the same one as this. It's one thing hearing people talk about it and like theorizing it. It was another entirely to actually play it and realize, oh my god, the grounded movement speed has now pretty much doubled, and there's so many knock-on effects for that, where it's like, having movement improved like that means that punishing things like fatal blows, way easier. With punishing people, way easier. Doing little micro dashes back or forward to kind of get, better combo pathing, way easier. Like, that one change has absolutely made all the difference in the world to how smooth the game feels. And I am so relieved that it does feel as good as we were hoping it would. I know there are people out there that are still like, it doesn't feel like they're fast enough, but honestly, you can go from absolute full screen, block dash your way in a handful of times, and you're like from full screen to touching distance in like a second and a half. Like, especially someone like Johnny Cage. And that's another thing. No one, like, Johnny Cage had the best grounded movement, but no one was moving badly. And that is something I hope stays consistent in the full game. Because, like, yeah, you've got your characters that move the best, and they're going to have, like, I mean, just look at, like, Rain or Fujin and MK11, right? These characters are absolutely just, they're basically running in the game without a run button. But that was fine for me. The opposite end, however, is not. When you have characters that cannot move, they feel horrendous. No one was feeling like that to me in this beta. Like, no one at all. And I really hope that stays consistent, because good movement across the board makes the whole game feel better for every character you're playing. At least that's my opinion. So I'm very satisfied with the movement.
I think it kind of feels more like MK9. MK9, every character could dash block. And that was good. Like, that was the whole thing. I just saw in chat, Liu Kang moves badly. I don't agree. I was playing Liu Kang for a good amount of time last night. In sort of the closing period of the beta, I revisited Liu Kang, and his dash block felt fine to me.
I will say, by the way, Foxy, thank you very much for the resub. Of course, chat, this is a live stream that we're going to be making into a YouTube video, but for those of you watching it live, there will be ads playing. Subscribers don't have to watch them. You know how it is by now. But thank you very much for the support, as always. But yeah, I think it definitely requires you to be comfortable with dash block. Like, I know a lot of people that played a lot of 9 really like the movement. A lot of people that played a lot of 11 really like the movement. But there are players out there that just don't have experience with dash blocking and the technique you have to do it in this game that maybe weren't feeling that improvement straight away, because obviously it just takes a bit of getting used to, because it is quite an advanced movement technique for Mortal Kombat games. But when you do get to a point that you can do it, and you can do it on demand, and you're absolutely schmooving around, it just feels so much better.
But on that note, though, with the improved dashes, it wasn't just movement that benefited, it was aggression.
Yeah.
Certain like knockdown situations where you can now, you know, dash in, and you're point blank, and you've got a cameo to cover you. All of that is just so much better. Like, all of that has become better. So the game has not only sped up from a just grounded point of view, it's been sped up from just what you have.
I'm just going to make you a little bit louder, sorry, just in case.
Sure.
There we go.
But yeah, you can do these combos, go in for certain situations, dash block your way in, and you know, you have Oki that you didn't have beforehand. But with all that in mind, I think that was the biggest, most substantial change. Let's talk about some of the other changes. And honestly, yeah, last thing about dash block, I have really nothing bad to say about it. It was simply a major change that I feel like is unanimously welcomed. Everyone I've seen on social media, streamers, players, whatever, everyone seems to like it, and I'm not surprised why. It just makes the game more fun.
So if we are moving on to something else that's new, though, let's talk about some of these new characters we saw in the build. You know, Lee May, yes. Johnny Cage, Frost cameo. Let's talk about Johnny Cage, because oh my god, this might be one of the most interesting appearances that Johnny Cage has ever had. Like, I was not expecting him. Like, we saw him on the combat cast, where he had, you know, some brief explanations that the star power and all this extra stuff he was having. But oh my goodness, seeing it in motion and seeing like these massive, gigantic combos he was doing, how realistic it is that you can build up the star meter, the crowd noises cheering him on, and that it's like whenever he's in a match, he brings a crowd with him who are like, they'll boo you if you drop a combo, cheer you on if you do something really like flashy, and like laugh at you if you get punched in the nuts or whatever. Like, he brought so much personality to the game that it's really hard to dislike him in this game. Like, even if you are like a supreme Johnny hater, he has so many redeeming qualities just as a character in this game.
I mean, I'm already sick of him, and that's only ever a good thing. His gameplay fits his character, annoying and insufferable, but I think he's one of the examples to show that this game has the source. People said they don't want, you know, or they wanted combos. They didn't like having not many combo options in MK11. Well, take one look at Johnny Cage in this game, and things are drastically going to be different. He is one of the examples, though, of early, being impressive early, but everything that you're blown away by day one and all the Twitter clips and the streams, that's all B&Bs. That's stuff that is just going to be his combo damage.
Oh, yeah, by the end of the beta, I was seeing, like, you know, strong Johnny players were hitting those, like, 500 damage star power routes and stuff. That they were just doing it all the time. You know what I mean? It just became a part of the game plan. Now, you have to remember, a lot of the gigantic damage was coming from the fact that he, you know, obviously had Kano cameo most of the time. And don't worry, we are going to talk about Kano at some point, because Kano is actually the strongest character in the beta. Like, for sure. But again, it just goes to show that someone like him, with the right kind of cameos, is going to completely transform. Like, right there, you just saw in the video here, like, EX Nut Punch being really fast, being a mid-strike. That is strike. Like that. It is strike in Vuln and can be comboed from with Kano Knife. I could already think of other cameos we've seen in the game that will do the same thing. I imagine Cyrax Spin will do the same thing. If anyone's got, like, an ambush stun, they'll be doing the same thing. So, like, you have this move that by itself is just a standard reversal, but then when you've got the right cameo, it now becomes a full launcher, and the game is going to be full of stuff like that. But then at the same time, I saw plenty of Johnny Cage and Frost, and that looked really scary as well, because then you get, like, side switch on demand, you get the ability to go for stun, and then build some free star power. Like, Johnny Cage has got a lot of stuff, and there's going to be a lot of cameos that make him even stronger.
I honestly think that one of the reasons Johnny Cage could be seen as so overwhelming in the beta is that some characters in this build, having access to just Kano, for all we know, when the game comes out, those characters might still benefit from Kano the most. We don't know that for sure. There's still plenty more cameos.
Unless they completely change how Knife and Kano Ball assists work, Kano is going to be incredible in the full game. Like, this is not a case of everyone's just going to stop playing him. Like, if he still does this, he's going to be messed up.
Which I'm okay with, because it's cameos. Cameos are what makes MK1 MK1. Like, I have absolutely no issue with Kano being good, because I'm yet to encounter a bad cameo so far. Every cameo's felt good. It's just that the reward they give characters is very different. And Johnny Cage is one of the clearer examples of showcasing how much a cameo can make or break what a character can do. Where Cage with Kano, like, invincible nut punch that, yes, we are aware, by the way, you can throw him out of it, but you can't always throw him in instances that he would use it. If he's, I mean,
people are going to be doing the duck, you know, the block OS for getting around throws. So throwing is actually going to be dangerous in this game in general anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But in general, though, Cage already has a cameo that he works wonderfully well with. So we kind of just get to see, I feel like some characters, we haven't been able to see the complete package yet, because there is no cameo that fits them to that strength. There's a lot of cameos in the full release. We've only seen probably 4 of them. I'm not counting what we've seen on combat casts and trailers, because, I mean, sit down with it, grind it, figure it out. You know what I mean?
And there's going to be 2 more we see by the time Gamescom opening might happen. So
exactly. Like, you know, we've seen Kano in trailers, and it didn't do justice to what Kano provides you, right? That's just is what it is. I think some characters have been able to, you know, relish certain cameos so we can see what they're all about. I think we're looking at Cage thanks to the Kano or a bit of Frost. Kenshi in stress test with Kano, or having Frost here, where you can set up all of the puppet mode combos.
But then at the same time, who is a cameo that Johnny Cage, and again, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be someone out there that was playing this that will disagree with me, but I don't recall ever seeing Johnny Cage do anything with Jax. I don't think it's going to be a case of every cameo will work with everyone, because, like, Jax makes someone like Liu Kang, Li Mei, even like Katana way stronger, but then someone even as powerful as Johnny Cage was looking, I don't see what Johnny Cage would get from Jax, or why Jax would be necessary for him at all. And I like that dynamic.
I fought against a Johnny Cage player that had Jax, and it was kind of mostly just like corner combos, I guess.
But is that really something that Johnny needs help with, though?
No, it's not. I think that might have just been someone that Jax was their favorite, and they kind of just wanted to play it for fun.
Yeah, plus it's a beta. They could have just been trying stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna be too much of a waste, because you're just playing some matches and having a laugh. But the cameos did give all of the characters combined something. And that's what I think's really cool though, because
I really hope that stays in the full game. I want every cameo to be usable at least with somebody.
I feel like the one thing is, of all the cameos, I saw the least initial use out of Sonya of everyone. I know Sonya was paired with some Liu Kang. Sonya was paired with a little bit of Katana.
Yeah, I saw Dragon doing Katana Sonya and was like doing really, really well.
Yeah, well, you know, Dragon.
Has been playing the game a little bit longer than most of us. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a different case. I think give a top level player the option to play the game for that long.
But still, no. But the point is, someone like Dragon, who obviously you know QA for NetherRealm for as long as Dragon was doing it, has obviously seen something in that cameo pairing with Katana that makes a top level player such as himself go, "This is the one I want," and that's important.
Yes, but it's like even with Sonya, Square Wave was like the only move I saw. So you know, just the Square Wave on its own is a good enough tool for some characters. I still am not convinced really whether I thought Liu Kang was best with Sonya. I do really think Liu Kang and Jax, even by the later end of the beta, I really liked that combination. But yeah, I mean, talking about character strengths, there's probably a lot of people that are going to ask us, and we won't get too far into this. A lot of people want to know, who do we think, and who does everyone think, really? With the
tier list? Let's do a beta tier list.
I mean, I just think impressions. I don't want to call it a tier list.
No. I'm joking. I think there's nothing wrong with the space. You're just giving some thoughts.
If I'm giving my thoughts on how I thought characters worked, you know, in terms of like most obnoxious to maybe least obnoxious, I feel like Johnny Cage and Sub-Zero were, for me, the top two. I know there is an argument to be made of Kenshi. Of course, Kenshi could definitely be right up there because the Sento stuff, the more likely the block string stuff that Sento had was the most overwhelming.
Oh yeah, there's like pseudo block infinites.
But I would say those three are, you know, they were doing the most.
I would say that those were definitely the clear-cut strongest three, at least with how people are playing the game currently, right? Because it's. But like...
I think they're the only three that got real super use out of the cameo system. Well, I think the other characters didn't quite have their cameos yet that would let them thrive like the other three could.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made for that. Because even someone like Katana, Katana I do not think is a weak character at all, but I can see her being the weakest of the beta characters by default only. But at the same time, I've been theory crafting like cameos that should, in theory, make her absolutely broken. Like Cyrax cameo, we obviously don't know anything about in depth. We can only go by what we've seen in gameplay and stuff. But I think that Cyrax cameo should make her really just... I mean, I'm not going to go into great detail, but looking at what he seems to give a character, that's exactly what she needs in every single way. So, like, maybe it just takes the right cameo for some of these characters to absolutely explode. But the main thing for me is no one seemed bad. And that is, in my opinion, the ultimate kind of balance you should be aiming to achieve. Because you're not going to make a game perfectly balanced, you know, like you are going to have your best characters and you are going to have your worst characters. You cannot avoid that. All you can hope for is that the gap separating characters is smaller to the point that characters aren't completely unviable. And I am not seeing that with any character so far. And I know it's only early days. I know the stress test was a few days, the beta was a few days, and obviously they're very different versions of the game as well. But I was never getting the impression that any of these characters, like, oh my god, this character's a waste of time. Like, someone like Katana, she's got gaps in all of her good strings. She needs the right cameo to do good damage, but obviously, you know, she can pick them to get that. And obviously her mids aren't the most reliable, but they're not useless. Again, there's a lot of risk attached to them, or they're very short range. But it depends on what you're playing around, right? Katana was this character that was really playing around a strong neutral against, you know, even in the Johnny Cage matchup, you would kind of want to slow things down, keep them away, bide that time to get your cameo back. So when, you know, as soon as they get in, they've got to deal with cameo again. And then you had characters who were the opposite end of that, like Johnny Cage, who was looking to get in permanently at all times and doing these like half-life B&Bs. Like, I think they were all strong. I think, for me, personally, Sub-Zero's at the top, Johnny Cage underneath. Kenshi, I did not play a single Kenshi this entire beta, because he is not a common character. But when you see the specialists, right, the Hayates, the Sonic Fox, the Titanium Tigers was playing a lot of Kenshi. And you see the people that really put a lot of time in, they were all unanimously thinking to themselves, like, yeah, this character is too much. Like, this character is absolutely broken.
The only thing about Kenshi, I have to say, is he did seem to have more of an inherent counterplay. And what I mean by that is...
when he was in stance and it was off recovery?
Yes. Yeah. Of all three of those characters mentioned, Kenshi was the only character that had a state where he is at an extreme disadvantage. And that's when the stance is down, the opponent still has a good amount of life left, and he's kind of stuck in that mode and now doesn't really have anything to keep you away, doesn't have a huge amount to fight back, and is now in a situation where it's kind of hard to get the puppet to come back. Like, that is my only thought process on Kenshi, is that if he works perfectly, where to be fair, it might not be hard to not have it go perfect because you can just keep them locked in and everything else. If it doesn't go perfect, he is in a state where you can do something serious about it. Sub-Zero and Cage do not currently have that weakness. However, the advantage of a Kenshi doing what he does well is huge damage, pseudo-block infinite stuff, chip damage, meter build, a lot of broken stuff, right? So I guess he's the kind of character that really a training mode is going to be needed. You need to find solutions in a game with every character and every cameo, because there might be some cameos that are a counterpick to Kenshi, and they might make it really hard for him to win. You never know. And that's why I'm keeping a very open mind about all this.
So let's talk about that aspect of the game a bit more, though, given the fact that obviously beta, there's a lot more time spent.
Before we do that, the one character we haven't really talked about, and people will ask and say we missed out, is actually Li Mei. We haven't talked about Li Mei in this beta, who was the character that I played extensively across Jax Cameo and Frost Cameo. I played a little bit of Liu Kang. I revisited Liu Kang, and to be honest, he felt generally unchanged. My thoughts on Liu Kang is that he feels much better with dash block movement. He's really fun with that. Felt nice to play a character with a good mid again, I have to say. But I don't think Liu Kang quite had his cameo.
Oh, Liu Kang is the middle man.
Yeah, he is. I think Liu Kang was like just middle of the bunch, wasn't weak, wasn't super broken, had decent buttons for most occasions. However, this game is very cameo oriented, where cameos can very much cause you a lot of trouble. Liu Kang did not have that cameo for him yet. And I think that's one of the reasons that he's a little bit maybe underwhelming. I don't think he's terrible. I just think he's just not as wild as the others. But that's really what I have to say about Liu Kang.
But one thing about Liu Kang is he's still hitting really hard. Look, his damage was pretty much unchanged from the stress test now. He's still hitting close to half life for a bar in the corner. But then look at someone like Johnny who's doing that everywhere, but he needs star power to do it, right? So it's kind of like, well,
I do kind of wish I had
loads of bar.
I wish I started revisiting Liu Kang a little bit more earlier, so I could have played Frost. I heard some people say they liked Frost and Liu Kang, and I kind of would have just liked to have seen what the fuss was about. That's the one thing I never really got to try out all that much. I was too obsessed with the Jax combos. The corner combos with Jax and Liu are just too fun, man. They're just... And his set play was unchanged, by the way. I hit a lot of people with that. Like things were never different. But speaking of Jax corner set play, final character to really discuss was Li Mei. I think Li Mei was misunderstood. I think she was misunderstood. People said that they thought she was really weak day one, and I'm just like, I don't see it. I do not agree. And by the end of the beta, she's not the best character, but she's certainly not weak. I don't think she was close to the worst. I think she was kind of like maybe upper mid compared to everyone else. I think she was just underneath those characters that were like the best of the beta because she had stuff that only she could do and stuff that worked well. She had decent mobility. Her dashes were good. Her air mobility is nice. Being able to jump from full screen and see a move whiff and flip kick anywhere for a punish is really useful. She is a clear example of how drastically different the cameos can make her. I had a match against, Jake mentioned it as well, a really strong Johnny Cage. Jax was doing absolutely nothing for me in the matchup. I tried it a lot to see if I could get it working, just couldn't. Picked up Frost instead. Automatically changed how Li Mei could fight that character. With punishes into freeze, into a full combo. Anything into freeze, into lantern, into the launch, 1-3-4, EX, like 3 lanterns in the middle of a combo. That stuff gives you about 40% mid-screen. Really useful when you're looking to whiff punish your character and keep them at arm's reach.
I feel like seeing
and then, of course, you got orb setups, you have the chip. Li Mei across the board, we got a good look at what the potential lies, I think.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that Frost was a cameo introduced this time that has no ambush moves, it's all summons, but at the same time, her existence can change so much about a matchup. Just, you know, with the ground freeze being something to win trades easily, it's obviously gives you free corner positioning, extended combos, whatever. But like, again, the chip damage of the punch walk, the icicle mix up, you know, between where they're going to duck or whatever it is, like the utility Frost brings, I think can change a lot more than what the other cameos were doing in terms of, like, you have Frost, so now there is a much drier style you can play. You know, she was very good for characters that wanted to play at a bit more of a distance, or at the very least just keep someone out of point-blank range, where, case in point, Johnny Cage, he's got no fireball, and obviously he's built around, like, constant plus frames, amazing mids, probably the best buttons in the beta by far, and all of it on hit, leading to gigantic damage output. How do you deal with a character like that? You don't let him play at a range that those buttons can be effective, and someone like Frost lets you do that straight away. So I think her being in this build gave us a real look for how, if you're playing a character and a matchup feels like it's not going your way, or maybe you don't have the tools you need, it's not automatically a case of, okay, I'll pick a different character. It could be, I'm going to change my cameo. And that, I think, on paper, could be so good for character specialists, in the sense where you can go, right, I want to play this character and never change from them. But in order to do that, I need to have more tools at my disposal, so I need to play more cameos. And then the cameo is what you change based on the matchup, not the character. Or vice versa. Maybe you love a cameo, and it's like, this cameo is my favorite thing in the game, so I'm going to play a handful of characters to cover all the matchups in the game. That will mean I can still use this cameo all I want. And this beta gave us a true look at what that dynamic could be like. And I'm very optimistic for how that could look with we have access to more in total.
I mean, on the matchup sense, Lee May, the reason I wouldn't say I think Lee May was, you know, right up there with the Sub-Zero or the Johnny Cage, and that is that her weaknesses were pretty apparent. She has the lowest range of anyone in this beta.
Worst mids.
Her mids. Yeah, her mids weren't great. I must say, later in the beta, her back 3-4 became quite a useful mid string. That's confirmable, and it has some plus frames behind it. It's just a bit slow, that's all. And I think there's a gap in between it. I can't quite remember. But that was really useful. Again, if you paired her with Jax and the back 3-4 connected, you can actually turn that into a full combo anywhere on screen. If you are in the corner, you can turn that into a dash punch into air grab. So I think that was a useful tool. Her back 2 was just terrible. I think her back 3 was good. Her back 2 was not good at all. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, characters that had better movement than her, like Johnny Cage, faster buttons with a bit more reach, they really gave her trouble because they could basically just outfit Sia. It was really hard for her to actually play the neutral.
I think it's
but then Frost
added
that. You know, Frost just changed that. So you have a bit more threat. You can stick out things like a low freeze at a magic range. You could use an orb to kind of like reset some of that space. And if you actually did land a whiff punish on someone, rather than just doing 2-1 or something into fireball, you could do 2-1 ground freeze 40%. So again, this is a closing statement on that, I guess, in that, yeah, those cameos made a really substantial difference.
So let's have a chat now about some of the mechanics that were added in this or changed from stress tests to now. So I'm thinking stuff like, first things first, last breath. So this game, or this version of the game, featured the chip damage kill protection that was present in MK11 and wasn't present in any of the other NetherRealm games. They put it into MK1. Last breath is basically, if you're on magic pixel of life left and you're blocking something and the chip damage would otherwise kill you, it'll be hard to demonstrate because the way I've got my overlay, I'm just watching some gameplay from one of the beta days, so you can't actually see the meter at the moment. In fact, let me just quickly, for the sake of this point, let me just hide that. There we go. So now you can see the bar. Hope that wasn't bothering you all too much, not being able to see that until now, but it's all right. We're just having a chat. You've all seen the bar. But anyway, yeah, so in this game, when you're about to take chip damage to die, it will take any available meter you've got instead of health until you've got no more meter left to go. Now, I think it's really good that this kind of system existed in this game, because chip damage is going to be so huge because of cameos extending block strings and just way more attacks hitting you than normal. But at the same time, I think you're going to have to be really paying attention, because last breath is like in MK11, it would take away bar that would automatically regenerate anyway. Whereas in MK1, it's bar that you have to build yourself. And there are rounds that you've definitely lost. Like, you know, there could be a round that you're like, right, this round is gone, there's no way I'm going to win it, and they get you blocking. you have to know that you're going to lose and concede the round and let go of block, because if you don't, Last Breath will take your bar, and there's no audio indicator for the fact that you've taken it. Like, I feel like there should be some kind of like small sound for Last Breath taking a bar from you, so if you're not 100% paying attention, you can realize, oh, hang on a minute, I just lost a bar, I'm going to lose this round, let me just quickly let go of block and concede.
I have a lot to add to this, actually.
Yeah, feel free.
I've been thinking about it. I think the #1 beginner's trap is going to be not realizing Last Breath happens every round.
Yeah.
And losing all of your meter before you know what's going on, and you go into the next round with nothing. I feel like a solution to this could be quite simple. Hold block and something else. Some sort of thing you can hold while blocking to activate Last Breath if you want to.
So instead of it just happening automatically, you have to do something while blocking to make it happen.
I don't know exactly how that could work. I don't know what kind of button the hold would be the most useful for, because obviously it can't be something like up or down. I don't know about forward or back. Maybe back and block.
And it can't be stance change, because then you'll get fatal blow by accident.
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like because it uses your regular meter and not like MK11, as you said, with a meter that would regenerate, so it didn't matter. In this game, if you want Last Breath to activate, I feel like it should be up to the player to decide they want to activate it. Because most players that will play this game, especially casually and everything else, which will be the majority of the player base,
they'll have a breaker.
They are,
and they'll be like, "Where's my bar?"
They are gonna wonder where the hell their meter's gone, and they're gonna be pissed off that they've got into the next round and now have nothing.
Yo, Masquerade, thank you very much for the Prime. Sorry not to interrupt, but just to say thank you very much for the Prime. I appreciate it. Welcome, welcome. Thank you.
I just feel like the way Last Breath currently works, I like that it exists.
It needs to exist.
I like that it exists and needs to exist. I just don't like how it works currently. I just feel like the player should be more in control of it, rather than just, I don't want to use Last Breath and I'm just going to not block here. Because sometimes you never know. Sometimes you never know if someone's miscalculated something or whatever else. Like, if you've just released block, you don't know if that round really was over. But at the same time, you don't want to have to just power through 3 bars in round 1. So I don't know. I just feel like leaving it up to the player and have something that they hold maybe to activate Last Breath is probably a better option, and maybe more of a visual indicator that Last Breath is being used.
No, honestly, for me, I don't think it's a visual thing as much as it should just be like a sound cue or some kind of audio.
So something that you know, yeah, some cue.
I think that'd be the most. But for me, that's how I stand. I think it's important that mechanic exists. I think it needs to exist in a game like this. But it either needs an audio cue when you have lost bar, so you can be reminded that it's happening, or, like you said, it needs to be something that you can like choose to do while blocking, as opposed to it automatically happening. So another thing that is technically returning from MK11, I suppose, inspired at the very least, that was in this build that I don't think an enemy did to me a single time, was the down 2 combos. So in MK11, obviously there was crushing blows. If an uppercut, you know, you're down 2. If you would punish an attack, like punish a high attack or counter hit a high attack with an uppercut, you would get crushing blow and launch them for it. That, you know, punish or counter hit a high attack with an uppercut has returned in MK1, only now if you press meter burn and up forward. So you basically do a jump forward plus meter burn, you can spend 2 bars to combo from that down 2. Now, that's cool, and the obvious go-to example is like you duck a throw and punish it with an uppercut. You can turn that uppercut into a full combo. I feel like this is a mechanic that, as much as I would love to say people were making a conscious effort to not use, I actually think that's more of a lack of training mode than anything else, because 2 bars is quite expensive. You do build bar fast in this game, and you know, I know we mentioned it in our stress test video. We will go into meter build again soon in the beta as well, because I do have things to talk about with it. But at the same time, you build meter really fast, so 2 bars isn't the end of the world to spend, especially if it's not super optimal, because you can still win the round on it. You can still kill on it, whatever it's going to be. However, I think it's the lack of training mode. I think not having the ability to just sit there and practice it over and over and over again, and like what your combo route would be, because not every character is going to use that mechanic equally. Because some characters, they get nothing in the air, and ultimately the question is, why would I do an uppercut launch and then spend all of my bar to jump cancel when I could just duck the high and then just do a standing button into a normal B&B?
I have an answer for you there, because the only usable circumstance I've seen it used, and Chambos quite rightly pointed out in chat, is an anti-air. If you anti-air someone with a down 2, you can jump cancel it and turn it into a combo.
I never saw that. That would have been good to know with Katana.
I saw a few clips on Twitter where people were anti-airing with it, and they were jump canceling it, and then they were turning it into a combo. It is the only time
I didn't know you could do that. All I did with Katana was anti-air with uppercut, and I kept saying, I wish I got more damage. You're telling me I could have done more the whole time.
Now you know. Now you know.
Mate.
But yes, you actually could have used it.
Chat, why did none of you tell me that?
I feel like an idiot. But no, that is the only time I've seen it used where it is something that only that mechanic can obtain, outside of down 2 into cameo. Where, if you've got Sonya or something, you can turn it into. Only when it counters. Yeah, sure, but most uppercut down 2s will counter hit because most people will jump with a button. Like, most of the time.
If you want to do it...
There's no reason not to. Just buffer it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If there's no counter hit, it just won't come out. So you may as well do it every time. So, oh yeah, the input is, I believe it's up and block as the counter hit happens.
Yeah, it's wherever your enhance button is, so your block button basically, plus up, forward, whatever.
But I don't think we really saw the right characters that could use it. I think the best use of that could come down to characters with incredible down 2s.
Scorpion is going to do it a lot because he also has the air spear, which you can turn into ground spear, huge damage.
That's kind of my point. Like that's kind of my point.
Also, I'm going to interrupt you again because apparently Jandy said that it's any down 2 punish. It doesn't have to be a high. That's really interesting because that makes it a lot more usable.
When I saw people talk about the counter hit down 2, it was players playing it and coming over and telling us. So they might have still been in MK11 mode and just assumed it was high. So if it's any counter hit, then that's ideal. But
someone like Katana, I'm already thinking with Katana, I could have done like anti-air down 2, jump 2 into standing, string into fan, and then extend it beyond.
That's going to annoy you now, isn't it? Because you're going to want to test this straight away. Now you've got to wait 3 weeks.
Nah, it's all right.
To finish what I was saying, I think we're going to see it a lot more with like Tanya's down 2, Scorpion's down 2, characters that have those really long-reaching down 2s that are going to be their go-to anti-air in the first place. Like,
or anyone that has like a 7-frame down 2 or something.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Johnny's was like 8 frames.
Well, Johnny was just privileged, man. He just had everything. But, he had no projectile, I guess, so just give him everything else. But, yeah, I think that was, like, one of the instances where it's just not enough time to figure out the best use for it. I think later on I saw some people anti-air down 2 into it, and they weren't doing it day 1, whatever else.
That for me
just takes time.
No, that one discovery of me finding out that right now that you can do it off of an uppercut anti-air completely changes my perspective on the mechanic. I'm not even joking. Because in this game, like, uppercut anti-airs are really good. Because of the things, up block and variable jump timing and cameos to make jumps more annoying. Uppercuts, depending on the character, of course, are such a reliable anti-air most of the time that knowing you can turn that into big damage, yeah, that is going to change the whole thing for me. But it requires training mode to really know exactly what your best damage is. And, because if you're spending 2 bars on it, you really want to make sure it's worth what you spend.
I think that mechanic's immediate people being skeptical of it was misinformation. I think a lot of people assumed it was with punishing highs just because of how KBs worked, and people at Evo were using the term KB down 2 is back.
Yeah.
So everyone was just immediately thinking that it's the same thing. If it's a punish or a counter in any capacity, the mechanic is very different to what we originally thought it was.
Well, because it instantly makes it more usable for a start.
Yeah, it does. And having it as an anti-air, where most characters down 2s do anti-air, and normally they only lead to a single hit, it has changed the mechanic, because now you have the option to turn an anti-air down 2, which up until this point has always been seen as a reliable anti-air, but never worth it for the damage, versus the risk and reward of them getting a jump in on you, you now have an option to spend meter and turn that down 2 into a combo. And that drastically changes how I see that working.
Drastic go down.
It does drastic go down. If you want to go 1-on-1 with my down 2, you got a 1/3 chance of winning. But if I got 2 bars of meter...
No, if you jump at someone who's ducking, you got a 1/3 chance of hitting an anti-air. If you do a jump kick, you take at 66 2/3 chance, and then add the up block.
I got 2 bars. I got that 2 bars. It's a 66 2/3 chance of winning.
God damn. Now let's talk about something a bit more serious. Overall online stability. I have a lot to say about this. Stress test.
I do too.
Yeah, stress test. I would say our main critique with not a gameplay related thing, right? In terms of like a game overall very important thing, right? We're not talking gameplay, mechanics, whatever. My main problem with the stress test was it was quite unstable. A lot of sessions would just desync, disconnect you. It wouldn't, general things like there was no, on Xbox, there was no indicator for Wi-Fi or normal. It just showed everyone as wireless, whatever. Like PlayStation didn't show win-loss ratio, stuff like that. So in this build, information was much better. It was showing you Wi-Fi versus PC, win-loss was there. Matchmaking seemed a lot more strict. In terms of like, it would look at your, I don't know how it would do it, whether it was like a hidden MMR or if it was just a simple win-loss ratio thing. Number of games played, I don't know. But I know that there was a lot of people playing, but I would only find the same 2 or 3 people each time I searched. And then when I'd play that person for like 20 games, I would then find another group of people, and then another group of people, and then another group of people, which made it quite difficult for you and me to match up against each other. So I think the matchmaking was very strict, and I wonder how much it would stay like that in the full game as well, even for like the beta. But the main thing, I'm still not 100% sold on the online overall. I think when the netcode is good, it's some of the best in class, for sure. Like, whenever you and I would play, for those of you watching, Ketchup and I, we live in the same city, so we're not super far away from each other. But when we played against each other, we may as well have been offline. It was absolutely flawless. It was perfect. However, I did have my fair share of, I would say, unplayable connections. Again, I think part of that might have been matchmaking, because just looking at the ping alone, it was definitely prioritizing, like, score and win-loss and stuff over regions and like low pings and stuff. It was weird. Like, it definitely wasn't prioritizing ping, it was prioritizing something else. But then you had like what seemed to be the kind of the bugs, right? Like where cameos were appearing at the wrong location, or Jax was coming out and he was 3 times the size. Kano was like in the background, so you couldn't hit him.
So what happened there was that I think was exclusively tied to ping.
Yeah, because none of it happened in the towers mode. It's definitely an online thing.
Yeah, it only ever happened online, and I never once experienced it under 100 ping. If I had a good ping, it never happened, which leads me to believe that it is tied to worse online stability. The problem is, and this was not something we experienced in the stress test, is that the problem is when those bugs happen, the match is broken.
Yeah,
that's the problem. The match is no longer
because if the cameo is appearing in the forefront, you can't hit them, so you can't interrupt the cameo.
I am not convinced it happens for both players either, because I was playing yesterday in a Li Mei mirror match, and it was a questionable connection. I played it anyway. Full disclosure, I did do my matches on Wi-Fi, so that's totally. I'm not saying it's everyone else's
we're giving you
fault.
both perspective. I was wired, and Ketchup was on Wi-Fi for some reason, so don't worry.
No, it was a convenience thing for the beta. Obviously, I've got.
I know. I'm joking.
But I'm not going to be holier than thou and say, oh, everyone's connection was terrible. Like, look, I was playing on Wi-Fi, so like I'm not saying it wasn't my fault. But
you've upset chat, Ryan. Stream chat is not happy with you.
Well, I'd rather. I'm not going to mislead him. If I was on, I'm not going to say it's everyone else's fault.
Criminal. Stop.
But what I was saying was,
you violated the law.
I don't think those weird foreground background bugs, I don't think they apply to both players, because I was fighting a Li Mei who was playing it was either Li Mei or Cage. I think it was Li Mei. The actual base
Cage,
roster,
let's be real.
the base roster character was in the front of the camera.
Oh, I saw the same. No, I saw a clip.
I couldn't hit him.
Yeah,
I couldn't hit them.
Yeah, I saw a clip from Rip was playing Lee May, and his Lee May ended up at the cameo spot. He was like on the wrong axis. He was like,
yeah, but
in the background.
when that happened, I can no longer hit them, but they're hitting me no problem, and I'm sitting there thinking, this looks fine to you, doesn't it? You're not noticing this, and I guarantee it wasn't, because they were playing like nothing was wrong. I'm trying to hit them where I can see them, and it's just whiffing all over the place.
I did hear there was an issue with Fatal Blows, like turning all the lights off on the stage as well, making players play in the darkness. So
it's a long-winded way of me saying that the issue with the online right now is that when it's bad, it's not just, you know, frustrating and what people often say is
it does
unplayable.
break the game, yeah.
When it breaks the game, that is truly unplayable. Like, you cannot play this match anymore because you can't hit people.
The problem is that if that kind of thing were to happen in an online tournament, that match has to be replayed. You know what I mean? Because it absolutely breaks the state of the game. So it's like, for the sake of just the quality of life in online events, that obviously has to be fixed. But that's the thing as well, chat, and while we talk about this now, I'm not going to sit here and say that nothing is important because, you know, it's all pre-release, but it is a beta for a reason. You know, there's a reason betas happen. It's to, you know, when you've got a couple 100,000 people playing a beta, it's more than even a couple 100 testers you might have, right? It's just the access to information you get is just much higher. But at the same time, like, I would say if we're comparing it from stress tests to now, stability was much better because I didn't get disconnected or lagged out of a single set this time, whereas it was happening a good 50% of the time in the stress test. Didn't happen a single time in the beta. The worst connections were still pretty bad. Like, I feel like some of the stronger netcode experiences you can have in fighting games these days, it's not even a question of how they handle it when it's good, it's how much does it ruin it when it's bad. And something like Street Fighter 6, a connection has to be pretty bad to make it actually like full-on unplayable in a game like Street Fighter. Whereas obviously in the beta, sorry, if it was like over 100 and I'd say maybe 140, 150 ping, it was probably going to be like, yeah, this isn't a connection I can take seriously. But it's definitely a step in the right direction. It's just there's definitely still work to be done for sure.
Outside of that, I mean, what else is there really to talk about? I think just general experiences. We've talked about the game to death over the week and the weekend.
Yeah, it's like I was saying going into this chat. This wasn't going to be as much of a fresh talk. It's going to be a lot of comparisons because obviously we played so much of the stress test. I think, you know, let's just do a kind of a closing.
Oh, I tell you what, I have an idea. Before our closing statements.
No, that's, you keep saying it like it's so official. We're not in court.
You said closing.
I said closing.
You used the word closing.
Yeah, I was going to say closing topics. And you interrupted me.
Right. Anyway.
What were you going to say? Because I forgot what I was going to say.
Good. Because what I'm going to say is more important.
Go on.
I can't remember. No, I
can't.
You're
joking.
I was just messing with you. I was messing with you. But no. So now we've played the beta a lot, and we kind of know what we like, what we don't like, the kind of characters we gravitated to. We know there's a lot in the final game, and there's a lot confirmed that we are excited to use. Has the beta for you changed anything that you were wanting to try now that you weren't thinking about before?
I want to play Katana. That much for sure. I've been theorizing Katana with Cyrax so much. Sorry, just as we were just talking about the topic before when the characters were desyncing, giant Kano on Chell stream. But yeah, so yeah, but that's I feel quite lucky that none of the characters I actually want, or no, not, but maybe that's not a way of putting it. None of the characters I've been looking to play have been in any of the tests so far, which means that I've had which means I've had no choice but to try out characters that I otherwise probably wouldn't have played. And I've been having a great time with them. And for me, the greatest example of that is Katana. Because, like, Katana is... Thanks to the cameo, you can play her in so many different ways. And again, because I know I want to play Cyrax cameo, we don't even know what his moves do beyond what we've seen them do in trailers and stuff. But I look at what he gives a character, and it should make her absolutely broken. But it's just really made me optimistic about the whole roster. Because so far, the roster is shaping up to be one of the most, I would say, and this is going to be maybe a hot take to some, this is looking like the best roster since Armageddon. Genuinely, it looks like it just has a bit of everything. It's just missing a robot. Give it a robot and it's the perfect roster for sure.
I'll tell you what, one thing that I think could be cool is Kitana's trap like that you use and they're stuck in place for a while. Using the plus frames of that kind of situation to meet you like a Cyrax self-destruct or something. She's got simple armor, isn't she? That she could use maybe.
I'm telling you, man. Like I have ideas. I'm not going to go into too much detail yet in case none of them work, and I don't want to be disappointed. But I'm thinking of so many things that will be really possible. Yeah. So Paul B asks in chat, have you discussed? Because actually, this could be an interesting point because we're kind of just going with topics that we're thinking of right now. Ask, yo, Stutter, thank you very much for the 51 month. Welcome back. I appreciate that. Have you discussed the top 3 criticisms from a gameplay perspective? What are those criticisms? Because we talked about the grounded movement speed. Like that's the first thing we talked about was the dash blocking because that's obviously really important, and we like that. But what other criticisms would you say? Because we've tried to think about topics other people have brought up.
We've already talked about this earlier, but I think a big one for me actually is Last Breath. I strongly, I like Last Breath in the fact that it exists. A game like this needs that. However, I strongly do not like how in every round it will just activate on its own, and I don't feel like there's a huge amount of information behind how it works. I think a lot of new players are going to just lose their meter and be like, where is it? Paul B's asking, what is Last Breath?
You have talked about this already, so there's no point just repeating ourselves.
The short of it is a chip damage avoiding tool. It was in MK11. If you were about to die from chip damage, it would take your defensive meters, so you could survive up to 2 hits before you eventually lost the round. It's the same thing in here, but it uses super meter, so you can survive up to 3 hits. It takes a chunk of meter every time. The very quick of it is, it's great that it exists, but I think it's too likely to come out on accident for players that don't know about it. There's an argument to be made that that's their own fault. Maybe they should know about it because it is in the game. But I personally would quite like it if the player defending had something extra they could hold to activate Last Breath. Because if even a single hit of meter goes that you don't want to lose, you're going into the round with less resources. And I feel like the chance of it happening on accident is quite high. But that's probably my biggest criticism from a gameplay perspective, I think, is that.
So this is actually a good point, and this is something that I've seen a few people bring up that I would like to touch on. And again, we're kind of getting to the last few points of this video. But someone's saying about, do you think there's a lot of timeouts? I think it may have even, I think it was Max yesterday that put a tweet out saying that he'd noticed that a lot of games were either going to a timeout or like near timeout. I can say from a personal perspective, honestly, I have not noticed until I started playing Katana with Frost specifically against Johnny Cage, which is ironically a lot of what the matches in the background of this video have been from yesterday. I have only noticed there being a lot of timeouts when I have played a character with a slower style because I am playing to avoid this rushdown menace that is looking to take away half my life with every touch. So it's like, the only time I noticed timeouts or getting near timeouts was when I was making my strategy to play around that, you know, and slowing it down to the point that I could compete in the matchup with that, which is something I think Katana has to do. When I was playing Sub-Zero in Stress Test, I did not notice that at all. When I was playing Johnny Cage, I did not notice that at all. I think it's a matchup
May and
thing.
Jax didn't get no timeouts, I tell you that much. Not when they put you in the corner.
No, but that's for me, that's my perspective on it. I can only speak for myself. But yeah, I can say I did not notice more timeouts than usual, especially in this game of all games, because I tend to play very aggressive cameos and characters anyway. But I think if you can play for a timeout, that is important, because a fighting game that has too many timeouts, yeah, that could be a problem. But a game that has no timeouts, that means there's a problem with dry play. And dry play is something that needs to be catered to for a lot of players. Found a lot of timeouts with Katana. Yeah, that's what I've been saying as well, Foxy. I think if you play a character that can slow things down and you're playing for it, you will see them. But you kind of need to be able to do that. I think it's important to be able to.
One thing in other criticisms that I have a concern about is meter gain in some situations seems a little bit high. There are some characters that it's actually really hard to combo them. And I'm thinking mostly in regards to Cage and Kenshi here.
Johnny
but
Cage was the number
I
one.
I would say Sub as well. Sub, Kenshi, and Cage. They did so much on block that you can't really do a lot about. The meter they gained meant that when you finally hit them, and if you're against someone really good, really, really good, you finally hit someone, they break all the time. Actually, I had played matches where I swear someone had hit like 4 breakers in a game, maybe a breaker every round, and it's meant to be 3 bars, for a breaker. You'd think that's a lot. With characters that do a lot on block, you can't really challenge because of either plus frames or pressure or true block strings. That's all meter that they're just going to use to play reckless and save themselves with later. So it's hard to say this though, Jake, because I feel like you might be thinking the same thing. Probably the biggest thing in this game that is a thing that no one is really using is avoiding or flawless blocking stuff on block. You couldn't do that in MK11, but you can here. I feel like that's just going to become an important thing that people will start doing, because that does reduce meter gain. It doesn't just save you from chip damage, but it stops their meter build as well. So what I have concerns about here might actually be fixable by flawless blocking on block. So I don't want to say that that's something that I want them to change. It's just an initial concern that we'll see how much flawless block will maybe alter. You know what I mean?
I actually think the main issue with, and I'm not going to say that like meter, because the thing is, I think you need a lot of bar in this game, just because of how much is tied to it and how many mechanics like do spend it quite freely. But one main thing that happens in MK1 that isn't really as much of a thing, if at all, in other MKs, is the bar you build by hitting someone. Like, we all know how you build bar by now in MK games, right? Dealing chip damage, doing special moves, doing special cancels, like getting hit and taking damage, right? That always builds you bar. But in MK1, you build a lot of meter by being the one to do damage. So you've got a character like Johnny Cage, and I think there's a reason this is being talked about so much now, is because Cage and Kano has so many long B&Bs that hit loads of times. The amount of hits, the amount of damage you're doing, the cameos you're calling, the special moves you're doing, especially when he's got access to hype. Most Johnny Cage B&Bs will cost a bar, and by the time it's over, he's built the bar back for the most part, near enough. Like, he actually had like a 500 damage combo with star power that by the time the combo was over, you had 100% built back what you spent. As if you opened it with an EX move. So I actually think that if they were to do anything to the bar to make it not like you have so much of it, if they even deem it a problem at all, making it so you build less damage by hitting the opponent. Because you have to build bar when you're getting hit. Because if you're just getting slammed, you need something to fight back. That's the way it needs to work. I get that. Especially if you need to like build up a breaker. However, I feel like you do build too much bar by doing damage in this game, which is not something you normally see in MK in general. But even for this being maybe the first time we've seen it, it's, in my opinion, it just gives you too much, in my opinion. Because it's like you'll just be on this like absolute steamroller, and you've got as much bar as a person being hit, which you're using to steamroll them, you know.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the things that we'll see down the line, but and that's also something that will not be affected by flawless blocking either. That's another major factor, is that, you know, flawless blocking to reduce meter gain is one thing, but if they're building loads by hitting you, that is meter gain. You can do nothing.
Well, how many times were you against a good Johnny Cage player who was like having an absolute steamroll around against you? You finally get up, hit them, and they've been beating your ass so much they have a breaker immediately the second you touch them. So you finally get a hit on them to slow things down, and they can break it straight away. And then, you know, that's it. You're going back in again.
Here's something we haven't talked about, and you said that, actually, you mentioned earlier we would. A lot of people in chat are talking about Kano cameo. You already said it yourself. You think Kano was the best character in the beta.
He sure was.
I am not as sure, purely because even then, Kano only worked with really 2 out of the 3, maybe 3 if you count.
No, he was insane with Katana. I didn't even see it until the end of the... He was giving Katana 400 damage, like, no bar B&Bs.
Oh, wait, no, tell a lie. I did see those... I saw those clips on Twitter. So, Kano works well with...
I didn't see Kano in Ime, like, ever.
No, because I don't really think he gave her any. I'm looking at what he would provide, and she didn't need it. She's one of those characters that had stuff that Cameos needed to fix to make her better, and Kano did not fix any of those problems. So Kano worked with really well with Sub-Zero.
I would say Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage, Kitana, and still Kenshi. Not as much. I know a lot of people are playing Frost Kenshi by the end, but still good, dude.
Tigers was still using Kenshi with Kano.
But you know, the reason I think Kano is so strong, though, is because, again, you know, we haven't talked about it as much in this chat, but the difference between Ambush and Summon Cameos. Ambush being the one that you just call them and they come and do it. Summon being the ones that, you know, your character is stuck in place while the assist comes out and does the move. Knife and Ball both being Ambush, meaning you can do them at any time on block. You do them for Oki, do them at full screen and give yourself a guarded way in. The Ball being a mid that you can let go whenever you want. Like, those two things are just such an astonishingly powerful utility to give any character. I can't see it ever being bad. You know, Knife giving you combos where you don't normally get them. Ball giving you safety where your character's designed to not have it. Giving you a way into cover. Additional help armor breaking, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, the character just does so much, you know, trading favorably. But that's exactly what I think Cameos need to do. Like, they need to be changing it so dramatically. Otherwise, what's the point, you know? If it just ends up being, this cameo has a stun, this cameo has a strike attack, this cameo has a projectile, like, that's boring. What we need is cameos to be bloated, so it makes the whole game just blown wide open. Because they're definitely going, like, that's another thing we've seen for sure, this is going to be a crazy game. Like, definitively, we're talking options, combos, high damage, fast pace, like, this game is going to be chaos, and that is what they're going for 100%. They're going for, because I haven't felt this just wave of just, oh my god, there's so much to learn and keep track of, and huge damage and great ways to obtain it. I haven't felt this way since, like, the launch of MKX, genuinely. I'm not saying the game is like MKX, I'm just saying the way the game makes me feel to learn it is similar to when I first played MKX.
One thing about it, it's a bit exhausting. Not in a terrible way, but, like, there are some matchups and some characters where there's just so much to do that it's actually a bit. There's so much to keep in mind that I haven't played a fighting game in a long time where you play like a really long set against a really aggressive character like a Cage, and I'm like, I gotta take a break. I got a break. Someone asked when the Gamescom thing is. It should be in approximately 1 hour because it's 6 p.m. here in the UK and. They said 7 p.m. BST.
Well, I'll tell you what then, if it's about an hour since Gamescom, we should pretty much wrap up this chat. Like,
I think so.
Sharpish, otherwise it'll go too late.
I'm satisfied we've covered pretty much everything we want to talk about here. Overall, I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm a big fan of what they've added. I think there's still room for improvement.
There's a lot of work to be done in terms of online stability. I don't get the impression they're 100% with, like, the specifics of some of, like, mechanics in terms of, like, meter build or damage output, whatever. Like, I'll be very curious to see if anything does change to the next build, because obviously it'll be a good indicator for the kind of thing they deem as too good or not good enough. But overall, yeah, I'm very impressed with it, and I think so far it's shaping up to be a lot of fun. The roster looks really good. The changes I feel like I unanimously like all the changes they made from the stress test to now. I think it is putting the game in a much better direction. That I'm curious to see where it's going to go from there, honestly.
Overall, I'm just optimistic. The stress test to the beta was a very different experience. The better movement makes it a lot snappier, a lot more responsive, and just having more time to get more comfortable with the combos, the execution, everything like that has just generally made it, for me, more excited. It's not long until the full game's out, and to be frank,
3 weeks and 2 days.
I had no interest in playing any of the stuff that's actually in this beta. Like, I don't care about any of the characters, I don't care about any of the cameos, and I've still had an absolute ton of fun. So I'm just sitting there thinking, I mean, bro, in 3 weeks I'm gonna have Sector. You know what I mean? I'm having fun as is.
Ain't that the truth?
And in 3 weeks I'm gonna have Sector. You're gonna have Cyrax. We're gonna have a lot more characters we want to use. We're gonna have a training mode. Like, you know, we're going to be able to bring this game to our offline local and try and get some of the UK NetherRealm heads back into the swing of things. Overall, a very exciting time, I would say.
Yeah, well, for the sake of this YouTube video then, not going on any longer, thank you very much for those of you watching the VOD. Do, of course, let us know what you think about the game. There's more to come as we see new information. Even at the time of recording this chat, the Gamescom opening show is in like 1 hour from now, so by the time this video goes up, we'll know even more about the game. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. I hope you've enjoyed our thoughts, and of course, do hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with more as we get closer to launch, as it is officially less than a month away now, and lots to talk about as we find out more and more information about this game that we're definitely enjoying quite a lot. But from the two of us, thank you very much for hanging out. Thank you for tuning in. Do take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Peace.